What's up, my dude? So in this video, I'm going to be talking about Ken Bone Breaker Roczen. Sorry, I had to do it. Oh man, that crash he had, my God, dude. I don't know if I've ever seen a crash quite that bad as far as just the sheer impact of his crash. It really makes you not blame someone like Dungey for taking it easy every once in a while on the track. I think it really opened up the eyes of a lot of people. Like, this motocross shit ain't no joke, dude. Like, you can really get hurt doing this. You know, it really, man, I mean, everyone gets on Dungey for riding the way he does, but it's like, dude, people don't realize how easily they could lose a limb, completely get paralyzed, completely lose function in something, or even further than that, you could die so easily on a motocross bike. People don't understand how dangerous it really is. So I think that Ken Roczen's crash just opened up the doors for that. People just starting to actually realize it again. Because, see, motocross, whenever you're not crashing, it's like you're riding on a cloud. You know, you tend to forget how hard that ground really is, I think. And that's what some of the problem can be with it. You know, you can be jumping 150-foot jumps, and if you're landing on perfect, dude, it felt like you never even left the ground, you know? But if you crash in the air, and let's just say you crash and not only land on flat ground, but you land on the peak of a jump face without your bike at all, I mean, just the sheer G-forces of that, I think people underestimate that a little bit. But, so, let's talk about Ken Roczen 2018 Supercross. So there's kind of two different ways people have been looking at this. One way is that he will be even better than he was before. You know, he'll kind of do one of those Villapoto things where he has a really bad crash and it ends up giving him even more motivation and more reason to want to do well. And, you know, he's almost got like a chip on his back, like everyone's thinking he can't do it, so it makes him want to do it even more. And that sort of thing. A lot of people think he'll be even better than he was before, and I do think that's how Ken Roczen is at least thinking at this point, which is really cool. Shout out to him for doing that. I think that's awesome. No matter if you have the capability of doing it or not, just believing that you can do it and wanting to at least try to do it. You know, that's 99% of anything anyways. A lot of people forget, if you don't even want to do it, you can be in perfect health and you can't even do it. You get what I'm saying? So just him having the want for it still, and so many people after having a crash like that would have just been done with it, man. They would have been like, dude, I just can't do it anymore, you know? But he is like, he seems to be anyways gung-ho about it, dude. Like, he's wanting it more than ever now. And shout out to him for that. I have to say, I've not always been just the biggest Ken Roczen fan. I don't really know why. There's no particular reason. I don't really have a problem with him. I guess he's just kind of the new kid, you know, and you just don't really... I was always more of a fan of, like, Villapoto, Dungey, you know, Stewart, you know, that kind of era age, and Roczen's kind of the new age, and so I guess I just wasn't really all that big of a... I didn't hate the guy, I just wasn't, like, you know, rooting for Roczen, but now it's changed a bit for me here. It's as if it's... my respect level for him has just went through the roof, which is stupid, and it shouldn't be that way. Just because he had a crash and he's coming back for it, now I respect the dude. It shouldn't be that way, and it's made me realize, like, dude, like, anybody at the top level of motocross, they have went through some struggles to get there. You can believe it. Even the ones that you may not be able to really see it, or whatever, you know, you got to always remember what they went through to get to that stage, and it makes you just respect the whole scene so much more. So it just made me realize, like, man, nearly every one of them goes through that sort of thing at some point in their career, maybe not professional, you know, but most of them dudes at the top have went through a crash that's almost ended their life. I mean, honestly, you know, Villapoto had his crash, Roczen had his crash, Tomac had his where he tore both of his shoulders out of place. I mean, it's gnarly. The only person I can think at the top that hasn't really done that is Dungey. And everyone gets on his ass for playing it too safe. You know, he's not going for it. He's not trying to pass people when he needs to be. I mean, it really makes you laugh at those sort of people whenever you then go and see someone have a bad motocross crash and you realize how dangerous it is, you know? And that's what's so badass about motocross is it's like your risk factor is through the roof. So it makes it to where if you are that consistent sort of rider, you can really succeed in it. Or if you are that kind of take more risk, then you can also succeed, but it may be in a shorter term. So it has this like super risk reward element to motocross. Regardless of your riding style, you have a place in motocross. You get what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to say here. It's like the skill gap of it and the different riding styles can really come through and show who you are as a person. So it's just cool like that. But the other way of looking at it is like, well, Roczen will never be back to where he was before because it was such a debilitating injury. It's such a bad injury that he will never get full motion back in his arm and his hand. It wasn't just as simple as a breaking the arm. It was a lot more than that. I mean, it was basically like he put his arm in a meat grinder. It was really that extreme. He broke his arm, tore his elbow out of place. I don't know if he tore his shoulder out of place too, but he tore that whole side up, bro, like bad. And I think that when you tear something out of place and you actually tear ligaments and, you know, you do that sort of thing, I almost think that's worse than breaking a bone. Because a bone, they say, grows back even stronger than it was before. In certain occasions, if you break it really bad, it can be, you know, debilitating. But I'm just talking about as far as like the movement you still have in things when you tear the ligaments and the nerves and all that kind of stuff. It's not good, man. A lot of motocrossers that have those sort of injuries, they have a lot of trouble coming back from it. Like, I mean, I think of just any of them that's had ACL injuries. I mean, there's a lot of real-life people I know that have ACL injuries, and they just completely quit riding because of it. And, you know, you see people like Cincerillo, shoulder tore out of place, and then tore out of place again, and then it took him a long time to get over that. So it's a lot more than just a simple bone break with the Roczen incident here. Now, I want to believe that he can be back to where he was. I just don't know. See, Roczen's one of those kind of dudes you can never count him out. You can never. He can go 0 to 100 real quick. He'll squat on that real shit. Like, he really can do. He's just one of those kind of riders. He's not like a Dungey where it's like you can kind of predict where he's going to be. Roczen's one of those where he could come out and win A1 and it really wouldn't surprise me. Even though he's had these injuries and the whole 9 yards, it wouldn't surprise me at all because he's a just like gifted in the speed department and just figuring out how to get it figured out really quick. Now, it's not to say he's necessarily got it figured out as far as like a full Supercross championship, you know, putting all those races together or anything, but as far as just coming out and smoking them, he's got that part dialed in, you know. But what's really bizarre about this whole situation with Roczen and his crash, did anyone else realize the fact that, you remember he had that crash in the Monster Cup like just a couple of months before his crash in the actual Supercross series in 17? Those two crashes looked almost identical. I mean, almost the exact same crash. It's, you know how he kind of like flipped over the front of the bars through the rhythm section. He got a lot more lucky in the Monster Cup crash because he kind of landed on his feet down the downside of the landing, whereas the one, I think that was on, what track was he on there? I don't know. Was it Anaheim 2 maybe? I don't know. But he like flew through the air and actually landed on the face of one of the, his arm hit directly on the face of a jump. So that's what made that injury way worse compared to the Monster Cup. But as far as the way the crash looked, they almost looked completely identical when you go back and look at them. So it makes you really think, like, was it something going on with that new bike that he was on? You know, were they having problems setting that up? I mean, it's just a little bizarre You know, it's a little interesting that he goes to a new bike and has two humongous crashes that look almost the exact same within a 2-month time period. You know, obviously he was flying on the bike, but it may have been something with the Honda. You know, you just don't know exactly what was causing that. So do they even have that problem figured out? I'm sure they would at this point, even if they were trying to be a little more silent about it. I'm sure they've probably looked into exactly what caused it. But when Roczen had his second crash, that almost looked like he actually jumped off of the bike. Like, he actually kicked off away from the bike, where it was just very weird way that he crashed there. But when they are going that level of speed, if everything is not teetotally 110% perfectly set up on the bike, then it can spell disaster very easily. You get what I'm saying? Because the level they're going and the speeds they're going and the jumps they're hitting and stuff, if any one little thing goes wrong, then you could be completely out of racing just like that. So I don't know, but Roczen, like I'm saying, we're just going to have to wait and see, because it's almost impossible to predict with someone like Roczen. In a crash of that caliber, it's going to be really hard to depict what's going to happen. But, I mean, we've seen some footage of him riding on some Supercross test tracks and stuff like that. He's been riding for a little while now, and he doesn't look bad on the bike. Definitely doesn't look like, oh my gosh, he's so far away from what he was before. He doesn't necessarily look like he's just as on the edge as he was before in my own eyes. Of course, that's just watching videos. You know, what the fuck am I talking about? I'm not even out there on the track. How can I judge that? But just from the naked eye, it looks like he's not quite on the wicked edge that he was before. But you never know. He may be there by the time A1 comes around. And I know that video footage of things is not a very good thing to go by, because it can make people look way slower or way faster than they actually are. Same way with helmet cams. Very hard to actually give you the true feeling of what their true speed, because what's funny about that is you'll have people that have helmet cam videos and they look wicked fast, but that's only because they're shaking so much and they're like moving, the camera's moving so much, and that can really create this false sense of speed when people, when they're shaking a lot on the bike and doing all that. But when you get the helmet cam on somebody like Villopoto or Roczen, it almost looks like they're going slower because of how smooth they are on the bike and how still they keep their head. You know, it can actually make them look even slower than some people that are like bouncing and bumping around and doing all that stuff. But in reality, they're going 3 times as fast. So that's a thing to it there. But the other side of that is like the mental side that crashing what puts on you. Me personally, the bad crashes I've had where I would just like felt like the throttle stuck and it would just be going whoop, wide open, hit a berm, fly off the track, you know, fly in the air like 50 feet completely without the bike and land on my back on the other side of the track. You know, crashes like that and stuff that really spook you, they really scare you, like get you out of your comfort zone kind of crashes. Those definitely weigh on you in a certain way. But like, and especially the ones where, but your body forgets the pain. You know, like Villopoto's always said, your body does forget pain. It's a weird way of it. Like, you just forget over time how bad that crash hurt. And, but I guess a lot of it is just like the no fear element of Ken Roczen's riding style. You know, can he get that fully back like it was beforehand? That's my biggest concern with it. And I don't know, you know, it changed. You know, that arm has to feel different in some kind of way. It has to after a crash like that. That's a life-changing crash. Even if he wins championships and does all that, his arm will never be the same. After that, you know, it'll be a totally different lifelong journey with that arm like that. But, you know, he can still possibly win win some races, win some championships. A lot of people are concerned, like, if he has another crash, because most of the time those top dudes at least crash once in a year. Pretty bad, most of them, minus Dungy usually. But he still had some of his crashes as well, but none of his crashes seem to really be like super bad injury. I know his back breaking, you could consider that bad, but it really was. I mean, he fucking rode like the rest of the race with that injury. It was bad, but not bad at the same time. Like, it could have been a lot worse, is what I'm saying. It was close to being a lot worse. But, like, Roczen's deal, he's just going to have to find a way of blocking all that out. But, like, people were saying, like, oh, well, if he crashes now, how is that arm going to hold up or whatever? And how is it going to hold up physically over racing week in and week out? Roczen's really not had a lot of experience, like, racing full Supercross seasons. A lot of them, you know, he would have, like, crashes midway in the season, wouldn't get to experience the full season. So that's going to be the biggest test of it all, I think. He could come out and win A1 pretty easily. I mean, it wouldn't be that crazy for him to do that. He's just a specialist at that, like winning the weird races like that. But as far as a full championship scenario, I don't know. I don't know where he's going to be on that, but we'll just have to wait to see. It's cool to see him at least trying anyways. I'm glad to see that. So, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.